She told me not to bother you, you know.
She told you not to bother me? What's that supposed to mean?
You were in New York. You were busy.
So what? What do you mean I was busy? You give me a call. You didn't call me?
We didn't call you.
You didn't call me to tell me my mother died?
The last words she said to me, if anything happens to me, you don't bother Larry. You don't spoil his trip in New York.
It's insane!
The woman did not want to bother you.
I missed her funeral because she told you not to call me? Is that what you're telling me?
That's right.
Yes, hi everybody. Welcome to the Curb Podcast. I am Susie Essman. Who are you, the guy up on the right-hand corner? Are you Jeff Garlin?
Oh, I'm in the middle on mine.
All right, well, whatever.
And Richard's on the right. I'm Jeff Garlin, one of America's top teens.
And we have a special guest with us today, Jeff. One of our favorites, both of us.
Who is it, Jack?
It's Richard Kind, America's top Latin crooner.
Now, we have both known Richard for a very long time. I've known Richard, I think, since 1980.
Oh, that's longer than me, which is crazy.
We took an acting class together in 1980 down in the East.
I think
16th.
for Richard and I, it was either 84 or 85 when I met Richard.
Susie, what was the name of the theater?
I don't remember. It was in a church.
Was it Portobello?
Yes, it was Portobello.
Right.
Thank you. You're very good.
All right. Now, I will be able to remember nothing else.
Well, Richard, now we all know, you Curb fans know, that Richard plays Cousin Andy, Larry's cousin Andy. And how did you get this part, Richard?
I'm going to tell you a story that Jeff will say it's not true. I am correct. I am right.
Not. Your memory of things is shit. I know exactly how you got the part.
Who the fuck can remember Portobello Theater? I can.
Okay.
I remember.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's my story. Susie, I'm going to go first.
Okay.
All right.
They were casting Cousin Andy. Jeff, being one of my dearest friends, said, let's use Richard Kind. Larry, in his incorrect way, said, no, he's too famous. People will know that it's Richard Kind. It's too famous. Now, the only famous people, whenever a famous person was on the show at that time,
they played themselves. Yeah.
With the exception, who was the exception?
Sheena Easton?
Ed Asner. And he didn't want to be Ed Asner.
He did play a character.
Because Ed passes away in the episode. He didn't want people to think that Ed Asner died. So he says Richard Kind is too well known. He can't do the role. Jeff, it tells me, I say, you go back and assure Larry I am not too well known. Nobody knows my name.
This is 2003 around, I think?
don't know. Well,
around 2003.
I can't remember that, but that's what he said. And they auditioned some people, and then they finally decided, probably through Jeff's insistence, let's use Richard Kind, and I worked out just fine.
No, you did. There's no, once you cast somebody, nobody else could be Andy. You're Andy.
Here's Jeff's story.
But on my side of the story, Susie, don't skip over.
I'm not going to skip. I'm just saying.
I like hearing fiction.
Let's hear your side, Jeff.
My story, Richard began correctly. I said, who's perfect for this part? Richard Kind. Larry didn't say he's too famous because you weren't that famous then. What he said was too on the money. And I said, you're crazy. He said, no, it's too on the money. We looked at least a half dozen to a dozen other actors, and Larry went, okay, Richard Kind. Because Richard was perfect, clearly.
Yeah. But what I was saying is...
I want to say one other thing. That's not true about Ed Asner. Why would Ed Asner play the father of a deli guy who used to be a writer? No, Ed Asner was signed up to be that character. He wasn't worried about people thinking that Ed Asner died.
I didn't say Ed Asner. Oh, you're saying Larry wasn't? Okay. These are stories.
When you cast correctly, it's as though you couldn't even think of anybody else playing Cousin Andy. It's Richard Kind, his cousin Andy. There's
unequivocally.
Right?
From the get-go, this episode. Yeah. Wow.
This is the first Cousin Andy episode, correct?
Yeah, yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes. No, it is. I actually asked him earlier, and it is the first Cousin Andy, and the first scene I'll talk about when we get there.
So, Richard, what we do is we go through the episode scene by scene. So this is season 3, episode 6, the special section. Mm-hmm. And we started off in New York. And Jeff, you know this. Nothing is funnier than Larry in a wig. Larry in a wig is the visual.
Larry just created as another playing a character,
right,
which he's done 2 or 3 times in the show.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Always, just visually, let alone between him making character choices that are really broad. Awesome.
So we start off with Larry in a wig playing a mobster up on a roof in a Marty Scorsese movie. Mm-hmm. And he's got the mustache and he's being a tough guy. You're sorry. I'm sorry. You're sorry. He's hilarious.
Amazing.
You can see how much he's enjoying himself.
But the thing he did that was really hilarious was when he took the money and started slapping them in the face with the money.
Hey, you want the money? Is that what you want? You want money, you fucking idiots? Here, take the money. Here, go ahead, take the fucking money. You fucking idiots. Take it. Take the fucking money. Here, take it. Is that what you want? Take the fucking money. Come here, you fucking cocksucker. I'm scared of high costs.
Okay, cut.
And you could see how much fun he's having, knowing him as we do.
No. He loved that, no doubt.
Scorsese comes in, which is like a nice surprise that you see that it's a Marty Scorsese movie. And, you know, he wants more of a threat of violence, of course. And Larry needs more money. And
by the way, the idea Larry said, and it was improvised. No, I don't have enough money. I need more money.
That's
money. So funny.
Need more money. And he wants to take out Gino's balls. I mean, the whole thing is so bizarre and just hilarious.
The discussion of the balls in the bag and Scorsese saying, it won't read. And the idea he has the balls in his pocket, which Larry made up at that, it's like, wow. And Scorsese, wonderful improviser. Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, and we know that he does do improv when he's directing.
Yes.
He was,
and also, the only reason we got him was he digs the show.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't dig the show, like I remember Diane Keaton, we talked about this early on when we asked her to be on the show. She wasn't familiar with the show, so she allowed us to use her voice and an actor's legs to show her.
But that was season 1, so she wouldn't have known
season 1?
it yet.
Yeah.
This is already season 3, so people are more familiar. So Cheryl then, Cheryl's there watching the whole scene. She can't tell if Marty likes it or not. And Larry says to Cheryl, did my father call? My mother's sick. He should have called back.
Wait. I want to get one more thing in.
Yeah.
When Larry's talking to Cheryl, he's dissatisfied with Martin Scorsese and the way he's directing the scene. That alone is, wow, awesome.
Yeah.
So we get the information that his mother is sick.
Yes.
And they fly back to L.A., and Larry wants to stop at his father's house because it's weird that his father hasn't called. And they go to his father, Nat, who is played by Shelley Berman. For the first time, this is the first time we see Nat, Larry's father.
Is it?
Tell me, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Tell me, Jeff, how did Shelley get this part? Let's talk about Shelley for a minute.
Shelley came in.
Tell people who Shelley is, because a lot of our listeners don't know.
In his heyday, was the most popular comedian in the United States of America.
Best-selling album, right?
Well, I think he's the first comedian, to my knowledge, to win a Grammy for best comedy recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
And his famous stories about Shelley, how he sabotaged his career, and
I know.
But he was a very, very big. What are we talking about? The 60s?
Yeah, 60s for sure.
Although
later on, the last time I saw him really do something before Curb was on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. He guested on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and he was great.
And he always wore a toupee.
Well, I don't know about in the early 60s, but I got to know him very well. I became very close with him, and he revealed a lot of things about all the stories of his past. But he was so into wearing his toupee, and this is a key thing to talk about with the show. He said that when the landscaper knocks at the door, he would put his toupee on when he would go, the garbage man, didn't matter. Yet, he auditioned amongst a lot of heroes of mine. Great comedians.
Can you name any names?
No. Because they didn't get the part. Why would I name their names?
They didn't get the part because Shelley was the perfect guy, not because there was anything wrong with them. Shelley was so perfect as Larry's father.
Look, you can put all
my
the names
lips
in
are
a hat.
sealed on all of that shit. No. Now, if I may, so Shelley was, right away, he just was it. He got it.
And there's also a physical resemblance. There's something physically, the shape of their heads.
It makes sense. It makes sense. So Larry took him aside. I watched him take him like in the hallway or right by the door. And he said, I want you to do this, but you need to take off the toupee. You have to be bald.
Oh.
And in the moment, Shelley said, I'll think about it. Yeah. So he thought about it for like a day or so because Larry said, don't take too long. And he said, okay. And I never heard him complain on the set about being bald, you know. But yet when I go to lunch with him, toupee back on.
Toupee.
Yeah.
But it was very important for the character not to have a toupee, unless it became a storyline issue.
Right. The only storyline is in the next episode with the corpse sniffing dog where toupee comes into play.
Right. Okay. So we come in and we meet Shelley for the first time, Nat, his father, Nat. And Larry's like, how come you didn't call me back? And Shelley's, I've been busy. And Larry, you seem jumpy. And Larry's like, where's Mom? And Shelley goes into whole machinations. We had to bring her back to the hospital. She didn't want to bother you. That's my favorite.
Here's what
she
I
didn't
want
to bother you.
I want to make
We
this
don't know yet that she's dead.
Right. And then Richard comes in right after that announcement.
Right.
And Larry's obviously upset. Here's my opinion on this. This is one of the greatest, if not the greatest scenes that has ever been filmed on Curb Your Enthusiasm, because Larry is actually doing something unusual. He's supporting other people being funny. Not that he's not a supportive actor, but he's giving the softballs, if you will, although they were hard balls, because these guys are genius, to Shelley Berman and Richard Kind, who are amazing in the scene. Because Shelley, the nuance of the performance of avoiding telling Larry that his mother's dead, remarkable.
And the reason why he didn't want to tell Larry that his mother's dead is because his mother said, don't bother Larry.
Well, that was
Let him enjoy New
York.
Which as a storyline is hilarious.
Very funny.
Hilarious.
But Richard, so you get to the part. I'll comment on it in a second.
Yeah. So they didn't want to bother Larry. Richard hasn't entered yet. Richard hasn't come in yet.
No. But Richard wanted to say something.
I'm going to say something that will shock you. When I heard the storyline, I just said, this is just stupid. This is a false truth that his father wouldn't have called him to tell him that his mother died, and he doesn't tell him. It didn't sit right with me. I go, that's just, it's stupid. That's just a dumb thing. Over the years, I have been proven as wrong as wrong.
By the way, you were reading it, okay? You know,
yes.
And you didn't know the nuance of Shelley Berman's performance because he made that believable.
He made it totally believable.
He made it believable.
He did.
Oh, no. There's brilliance in his performance as not just in that scene.
He says, I wrote it down, so after a day or two, no one goes on forever, he said. And then finally Larry says, is she dead?
Yeah,
is she dead? And then she says, she didn't want me to bother you.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the funeral was on Monday.
Told me not to. She said, no matter what happens to me, don't bother
Larry. Let him enjoy New York. And then enter Cousin Andy. And this thing that you go through with him is another brilliant piece of improv.
No, Larry supported Richard and Shelley. Like, I think that he's not against other people being funny. He lets me be funny, lets you be funny, and he supports it. But I'm talking about his reaction in that was pipe, meaning he had to say what was going on. He had to support. The only time there's real comedy in that is the argument with Richard. And Richard says the funniest line. There's two genius lines, and I'll get to it in a future episode, that Richard Kind has said on the show. And in this one, he enters, and then he finds out that Larry knows, and he said,
Heard you were in New York. You missed a good one. This was really a nice.
Well, I'm sorry I missed it. Perhaps had I been informed, I may have been able to attend my mother's funeral.
It was beautiful.
Very nice.
Very well attended.
You missed a good one.
And
You missed a good
oh,
one.
by the way,
Well, how about the line? You would have
Rabbi
thought
spoke
the
beautifully.
Rabbi knew her.
yeah, the
Rabbi knew her.
No,
and the
this
rabbi
is so-
spoke beautifully.
I know.
Well, yeah.
So he's supporting how wonderful the funeral was. Larry he wasn't there for his own mother's funeral. And by the way, a lot of times I'll watch from Video Village, but sometimes I want to be close to the action. So I was hiding maybe 4 feet, 6 feet away when they were filming this scene. So I watched this whole thing, and I was just in awe. I was a fan. I couldn't believe how wonderful it is. And may I also say, Shelley Berman, one of the first, and Richard Kind, not one of the first, but one of the many wonderful actors at Second City in Chicago. So you're seeing these two improv masters, truly masters, doing their thing. And Larry David is so supportive of this. It's a thing of beauty, and it's one of my favorite all-time scenes.
And let me ask you this, Richard. The whole run that you have with Larry,
You come to town, you give me a call. Just
if I
call.
can't see you, there's no point in
I didn't
calling.
want to see you. What is the matter with you?
You know
Two
what?
people related to each other, two cousins, and you're arguing this way.
Okay, forget. I'm sorry I didn't call you. in
I'm
New York.
sorry you didn't
Okay,
either. Would have been nice to hear your voice.
Okay.
was that you or was that in the outline?
In the script.
It was in the
Oh,
script.
yeah.
However, Richard sang the line towards the end of the mark. You call. Well,
You
I
call.
wasn't going to see you. And then Richard says, I didn't want to see you, but you
Right.
call. That was awesome.
That was mine. If I could remember this, the smallest thing in the world, but it's funny. God, I think it's 23 years ago or 21 years ago. It's amazing. During my appearances on Curb, I'll use my daughter's name. Or there, I think I said Aunt Lolly was there. She's still beautiful. She looks like Audrey Hepburn. She's
No,
still
Aunt
so
Chan.
beautiful.
Aunt Chan, you said.
Okay. Aunt Lolly is the name I said during one of the takes.
Okay.
And Larry says, no Aunt Lolly. And I go, why not Aunt Lolly? He goes, I have an Aunt Lolly. So I got rid of Aunt Lolly and I used Aunt Jan. I also have an Aunt Jan. That's Aunt Leon's sister.
But the idea that you're disappointed in him because if he went to Florida, he wasn't going to call his Aunt Jan, and you were terribly the insult in you.
Oh, I think it's hilarious. Now,
Yeah.
it's also, this is 23 years ago. Remember, at the time, we didn't have cell phones, but they were just starting. You could call anywhere in the country and not get charged. That was around the time where you didn't get long-distance charges. But we all used to live by, you don't make long-distance calls.
No, that was a
because they
big
cost
deal,
money.
long-distance.
A long-distance call costs money.
But I
So you
love
call
Larry's.
when you come to town.
I love Larry's argument. I could call you from Los Angeles. That's a call.
Different. It's different.
It's different. It's not. It's different.
I agree with Andy on this. You call. And then Andy, Nat shows Larry the guest book, and Andy says, people were saying, "Where's Larry? Where's Larry?" Adding insult to injury.
No. They didn't say where's Larry, and that was the out. So a lot of nice ones, and then the out of the scene, which was perfect. Put a button on it. Was. Miss, whatever her name was, where's Larry? And when he read the where's Larry, he read it out loud. He turned to the two of them and we cut because that was a perfect out.
Was that it for you in this episode, Richard?
No, he's in another
No, he's in
scene.
later. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I watched too many in a row. So
Yeah.
then we go to Larry is home with Cheryl. And she's telling him, this one called, Michael Adler called, your suit is ready for Julie Blum's bat mitzvah. And Larry's like, is there anything more brutal than a bat mitzvah? And I thank Jeff for not inviting me to his son's bar mitzvahs.
Well, by the way, Larry was so happy with me that both my boys' bar mitzvahs he was not invited to. And I made a point of telling him, bar mitzvah coming, you're not invited. And he was so happy and relieved because he would have felt he had to come. And when I gave him that, because if you love somebody and you know what they're about, you don't just stand on ceremony. And I knew he hated bar mitzvahs.
So, all right. So Cheryl is telling him everybody cancel the dinner with the Mandels. Cheryl calls to cancel, and she uses the excuse that Larry's mother died. And Larry suddenly, this is a great idea.
That's right. I remember.
This is a great idea.
Hold on 1 second here. There was one with so-and-so. Well, before he finds it out, and they're discussing, he's talking about a lunch that someone calls him for.
Michael Adler.
I don't know if that's a Larry friend or not, a name he used.
I've never heard it before.
But I know what this is based on. There was a comedian that never spent time with Larry in New York, never spent time with him in L.A., and started calling him for lunch a lot. A lot. So that's where he put it. I won't say who the comedian is, and he never had lunch with him, but put
it on your list, Susie.
Yes,
No.
it's on my after list.
Oh, okay, your after list.
So Larry, this is a great idea. Now, I will admit, having dead parents, I used it, I milked it, I did everything I could to use that excuse, and I feel no guilt about it.
By the way, my parents dying, loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. Because
You
I
could
hate
get out of
making them
anything.
see anything. It was the only good thing about my parents dying. Literally. The only one was getting out of stuff.
Okay, and I've never used it. But when I was in 4th and 5th grade, I didn't do the homework. My grandparents stuff.
Well, by the way,
died.
I
that's
don't
a
like to do
classic. That's a
but I also
classic.
don't like to say it unless it's true. I mean, if
No,
because then it's a kid of horror.
Right, I
Hold
don't
on, he's
know.
a kid, and that's really
That's what I use.
the
Yeah.
dog ate my
But I've
homework
used
as
it
the
as an
cliche.
adult.
But my grandma died. All little kids use that.
I used
So
my
he
grandpa,
gets
and I
at-
used it a few times.
Yeah.
He gets out of the bat mitzvah. He gets out of lunch. He gets out of dinner with the Mandels. And then he's with Richard Lewis at the valet. And you could see Richard is nonplussed when he says, how did you get the part? Because he feels like he's the actor. He should have gotten the part.
That's what I wrote down on my notes was that they didn't take it further. And I don't remember if in the takes when we were shooting it, if Larry had questions about him not being happy for him, but it was clear.
It was clear he was not happy for him.
Yes, and
Not
I know
happy for him.
somebody who does that, who might be on this Zoom.
Not me.
You bet you do, you piece of shit. By the way,
Me or Susie?
Not me.
No, you. In the moment. I'm not talking, by the way.
Richard Kind you're talking
by
about.
the way, Richard, we're always happy for one another. But early on, if I got something that you felt you could have done a better job or you were right for, you could not hold your envy. It could not. And by the way, once it came out, later you were very supportive because you love me. But right away, look, he still loves Richard Lewis. And by the way, I guarantee that would have happened in real life. If Larry did a Scorsese movie, it would have. So what I'm saying about you, Richard, is not a mean thing. It's just a thing. Friends have those moments.
So Richard then informs Larry that he's starting to meditate. And Larry says, you got to get a mantra. Larry used to do it. You know, give yourself your own mantra. Larry suggests that Richard does lonely, lonely, lonely. And then Larry says he'll give Richard his mantra.
What is your mantra? Okay. Actually.
Oh, are you taking it back?
No, I'm telling you.
Oh.
Jai.
That's it?
Jaya.
Chai, yeah. What does it mean?
I have no idea, but you keep repeating it over and over.
So-
Jaya, Jaya, Jaya.
And by the way, that is based on what they were talking about as TM. And I thought, did this come from me? Because I do transcendental meditation. And I thought, did this come from me? And no, it was before I started doing it as my dad was dying. I learned it to relax. And also, it changes everything in the world around you, your viewpoint. But, and one of the rules, strict rules of transcendental meditation is you never tell anybody your mantra. Your mantra is super secret. Even though people have similar mantras or the same mantras,
they might all have the same one. It's a secret. Nobody knows.
I know that.
They might give one mantra.
No, I know the mantras, and it's not, everyone doesn't have the same one.
So Jaya, he gives it to Richard, and then he sees this guy Mandel coming over. He doesn't want to do a stop and chat. And Richard, in a passive-aggressive move, or maybe an aggressive, leaves so that Larry gets stuck with Mandel.
Well, he's fucking Larry, and he knows it,
exactly.
and he's happy, and that's what good friends do. They
and
either
Mandel
protect
is
you or fuck you.
Boring. He just starts carrying on in some boring conversation, which Larry then stops him and just says, my mother just died. I really have to just focus on myself. And he gets out of the conversation.
And by the way, that was Harry Murphy, an actor I got on the show, Second City. I want credit for how many Second City actors I hire. Because I had a pretty miserable time at Second City. Not when Richard was there. That was my golden time. You know why? I worked in the box office. And you know why? Everyone on the main stage who I loved, they embraced me and they let me improvise with them, which was something only people who were in the companies could do, because there was travel companies, a second company, but Richard's company would invite me. They saw something in me. Kid who wanted to be on stage working in the box office, they saw something in me and they let me improvise with them, which I'll never forget and is so...
All right, so Jeff, I'm officially giving you credit. I am giving you credit.
For the Second City stuff.
Yes, I'm giving you credit.
I will also say there was soup aplenty.
Are you talking about when Dan Castellaneta and I would watch you eat soup?
Well, we would go out, that's soup.
No, we go to a place called, this is really cool. So a lot of nights, Richard, myself, Dan Castellaneta, the voice of Homer Simpson, a brilliant improviser, by the way, who influenced me. And I learned, he and Mike Haggerty are the two guys that I learned the most from.
And Mike Haggerty, can I just say, played in the AAMCO episode.
Which we already did.
So I just want to give the reference.
Right. And what I learned from him was being succinct. Like, he would come in, say the thing, get his laugh, and either get off or stay out and be quiet. That's what I felt he would do, because everything out of his mouth was perfect for the moment and funny. Anyhow, sidebar, maybe interesting. So Richard, myself, and Dan Castellaneta would go to this place called Jeff's Laughin', which I love for the name, in the Lincoln Hotel down the street from Second City. We'd go eat, and we'd sit and talk, and it was always, we go to the Belden Deli sometimes with more people. Sidebar. And by the way, the Belden Deli was the first place where John Belushi realized how famous he was, because he went in there and people went crazy. This is early on. And he said to whoever he was with, I can't even go to the Belden Deli, which is kind of an amazing story. All right, anyhow.
Okay.
So now we would eat the soup. Wait.
All right, go ahead.
Well, what a lame story if it ended. All right, although the Belushi thing's interesting. So... Dan and I would sit on the same side, Richard the other. Richard always ordered soup. Always ordered soup. Dan and I a sandwich, what have you. And there were periods, I remember one, where Dan and I sat quiet and just watched Richard eat soup. And I thought, you always say, like Sean Penn, you could watch him read the phone book and he'd be great. Well, when Richard ate soup, it was kind of obvious who's more interesting. Like, we would sit until Richard noticed
Look at him drinking out of a can of water right now.
But Richard was so involved with his soup, he could go 30 seconds without noticing. And Dan and I truly found it fascinating watching Richard eat soup. Slowly eating his soup, having no idea we were staring at him. Okay, that's it. Long way to go.
Now we cut to Larry is at the cemetery looking for the headstone of his mother. And he asks the gravedigger, and the gravedigger says, oh, she's not here. She was moved to a special section. So he's confused. What does that mean, a special section? Next, we know he is talking to the head of the Mountain View Cemetery, George Coe.
George Coe, by the way, is somebody I was so proud and happy to work with because he did comedy. He actually, if I'm not mistaken, was either part of the cast or hosted.
You are right.
Yeah, Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. The
also,
first season.
He was in movies. Wonderful character actor.
Great character actor.
And he was in. Yeah, I mean, he could do anything, and he was somebody I greatly admired, which was the joy of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I'd work with people or be around people that I admired. So watching him in action, and he's great in this scene with Larry, tattoo on the right buttock.
Yeah. Well, first he says, the special section is reserved for villains, suicides, Gentiles, and mixed marriages. Yeah. And then he tells her.
When the Shamish examined her, he found that she had a tattoo on the...
Tattoo?
Yes, on
My mother had a tattoo?
Yes, sir. It's on the right cheek of her right buttock, if you will.
My mother had a tattoo on her ass?
On her right buttock, yes, sir.
And according to Leviticus, that's an offense, and it disqualifies her from burial in consecrated ground. So Larry wants to rectify this, and the George Coe character, the law is the law. And then later on, Larry is with Nat and you, Richard, Andy.
Yes.
And she'd be sick to her stomach if she knew this. He's very upset. And Nat explains they were just married. They're walking down the boardwalk. They got a tattoo. Cheryl then brings in crudité.
No, wait. Before that, Richard says something about you don't want to hear your parents making love, or I don't know how that came up. And then Larry's response was, I can't imagine you making love to Richard. I thought it was a hilarious exchange.
Yes.
Okay.
And then Cheryl brings in crudité, and Andy says,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what's for dinner?
Turkey.
No, I had turkey for lunch.
Oh, well,
It's all right, it's okay.
I'm going to go check on that turkey.
I'll take whatever you have.
Thank you, Matt.
I had turkey for lunch. I would have smacked you if you were my guest.
By the way, what's amazing, this being the first episode, that is so the character. Now, Richard...
Of Andy.
Richard, yes. But Richard...
I knew who this guy was right away.
Right away. That's what was amazing. You missed a good one. The way he walked in, the way he stood there. That's why Larry said he's right on these two, right? He was perfect and understood it from the get-go. And him with the turkey, and I had turkey for lunch. And
then they fight over Chinese food in L.A., and that's a whole other thing.
Well, if you want to know the stuff I get stopped for because of Curb, turkey for lunch, and fried onions. Crispy onions.
Crispy onions, which is in
the Black Swan.
The Black Swan episode. Yeah, which was a great episode.
By the way, this is what I love about the early years. We would have scenes that were loaded with minutia, and the idea that they're arguing about New York, L.A., Chinese, because everyone knows in L.A., it can't compare with New York. And in L.A., I'm not even exaggerating, the really only great Chinese restaurants are, in fact, in Chinatown. So the argument's always about pizza and Chinese in terms of New York, L.A. And Larry's like, the whole country, they wouldn't send one good Chinese food chef to New York, to L.A. That it's all in New York. That's where they went with the Chinese food. But that's, especially Jews, Sunday night was always a big Chinese food night. A lot of Jews, and also Christmas Eve. Or was it Christmas?
Day.
Christmas Day. Jews went to Chinese food and still do, I think, and a movie. That was the big thing to do on Christmas for Jews. But people in LA are always frustrated that there's not a great Chinese place near them in any area of LA. So I love the minutia of that.
Yeah. And then Larry calls them over and he says he wants to move the body and he's going to pay off the grave digger.
There's a key thing here.
Say, two things?
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
I'm known for being a giggler. I laugh. I break. And I was surprised at a lot of the stuff that I didn't break at with the first scene and that your mother died. With the turkey line, I had turkey today. I'm astounded that I got through it. And if it hadn't been the first episode, I probably would not have been able to get through it. And then when I became comfortable doing the show, when we did the Black Swan, Larry, of course, breaks all the time, right?
He breaks all the time, yeah.
I'm saying he breaks all the time, which is sort of gives me permission to break when I break. When we did the lineup on that, I know I'm going to another session, another episode, but when we did the lineup, we were dying. Okay, all four of us were dying. Pretty soon, Jeff and Bob would not laugh, but Larry and I would crack. After a while, Larry did not crack, and I kept cracking. And it was Larry looked over and like, all right, enough is enough. Like, stop it already. And it's like,
By the
for me
way,
to get Larry angry about somebody breaking.
To my memory,
Yes.
that's the only time I ever remember him getting upset with another actor breaking. I don't recall that. But I want to say...
I do it with him all the time where I'm just like, stop.
Well,
no. We do
that
it to
makes
him.
sense.
Right.
That makes
But he
sense. And
never
it's
gets
funny when you
angry
do it.
at somebody else. It killed me. That guy killed me. All I saw was the Stewie Hawa from Bridge on the River Kwai, and it just killed me. And
Mr. Takahashi, you're talking about.
Was played by
you know what?
Dana.
How about Richard? We'll have you back when we do that episode, and we'll discuss that again.
I think I'm busy.
Yeah, no, but Larry might want to do that episode. But anyhow, because he's going to do one every maybe, he loved doing this show. So Richard, you might be out, only bumped by Larry. Just but hold on. I know, but let me compliment Richard now. There's a thing in improv called explore and heighten. So someone says something, you talk about it, you feel it, and then you lift it by agreeing, which is what I always do on the show. I agree whether I explore and heighten it or agree right away, because that gives the other permission to go up a level. And that's how improv is done. So we're filming the scene in sort of the library area away from Cheryl, and it's Richard and Shelley, and Larry says what he wants to do. And Shelley says, I don't think it's a good idea, which makes sense for the scene. However, Richard saying, I think it's a great idea, propels the scene upward.
Right.
Like he's exploring heightening as Shelley keeps saying, I don't think it's a good idea. So Richard alone lifted the scene. And watching this, I was in awe of that. I thought it was brilliant.
Can I also say one thing? Thank you very much. I will say one thing that made me laugh. It's still in my head. Is there's four of us talking, right?
No, three of you.
No, in this scene there's three of you.
It's just you and Shelley.
You and Shelley and Larry. Yeah.
Nobody else, huh?
No.
Talking in the library. What I remember is Shelley, is we're talking and we're going like, and Shelley screamed. We stop. We all look and he goes, please let me talk. But this was not that. This was Shelley Berman.
Yes, it was Shelley Berman.
Was
yes.
it sublime? I just know.
Hey, listen, Shelley could be very difficult to work with.
I didn't say it was difficult.
I'm saying
but it was okay. It was a little difficult. But it made me laugh.
But always brilliant, by the way. Difficult, yes. And you put up with it because the guy was brilliant.
Now, then we cut to Richard Lewis meditating, doing ja ya, and the phone rings, and it's Larry. And Larry's calling about the mantra. He wants the mantra back. He sees, and Richard calls him an East Indian giver. And he wants the mantra back. And Richard's like, it's been working. And Larry says, well, split it with me. I don't know what that. And Richard says, well, that seems like a gay thing. And they go into this whole riff about, until Larry finally cuts it off with, my mother just died.
It's just that, my mother just died.
Yeah. All right, fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. Don't even think twice about it, all right?
It's all right, great. So we'll split it.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Fantastic.
All right, man.
Bye.
This is one of my favorite episodes of all time. There are two things that I'm bothered by, and I'll mention one right now. The meditation thing, which was part of the story, I would have cut the whole thing, or I would have cut it down to this, because we lost things. Because that was the first episode in the first 3 years where we lost things, not because they didn't serve the episode, although that was the idea at the time. We lost things that I loved because we had to make time for the Jaya thing. And the Jaya thing, I found it at no point funny. I think it's a funny idea.
I think it worked. I thought it worked, but that's you and me,
it's a different
honey.
opinion.
Yeah,
but when
exactly.
I tell you why it bothered me, which I will shortly,
So Larry says, my mother just died. And then Richard gives in, okay, we'll split it. And then he's in bed, which I don't know. How are they splitting it? One says Jai, one says Ya. I don't know what that means. But then he's in bed with Cheryl. And she goes to sleep and he makes moves on her and she's not in the mood. And then Larry says, my mother just died and I didn't have a chance to say goodbye.
And by the way, what she does beautifully in that scene is she makes it believable that she really feels empathy for him and now she's going to have sex with him. I thought that was great.
But that makes me funny. That's funny.
Very funny.
Very funny. No, but my mother died. But I am with Jeff on that. I was surprised, that I didn't think that I didn't get the meditation
but
thing.
By the way, the meditation might have worked in a different episode, but there was gold in this episode except for that, so it stood out. And we'll get to that in a second. I'll explain.
So he uses the excuse about his mother, and it works for Cheryl. And then we see Larry with the gravedigger. He gives him a wad of cash.
And by the way, I know that was a full scene, but it was cut down, like I said, that the thing was to where he's with the guy, he's already fumbling with the cash, he gives it to the guy.
A big wad.
And he says, all right, it's a deal, sure.
I'll meet you at 8 o'clock tonight.
That was a full scene, but what we cut it down to, or they cut it down to, the editor and Larry, to what was necessary. It served the show. And I love when everything's succinct. And in the next episode, the ending is succinct. I'll talk about that then, which is a thing of beauty. But
the gravedigger says to him, bring some friends. And Larry's like, why? He's like, you need to help dig. So next we see Larry, Jeff, Nat, and Andy.
Hold on. This is where the Jaya thing beat the shit out of me. So there was a scene, and there's two parts to the scene. Yeah. One of Larry's and I sitting outside of the graveyard. And to this day, I think that's one of the best scenes Larry and I have ever filmed. Ever.
Is it you sitting on the curb?
Yes, we're sitting on the curb outside. And it was, on so many levels, it was if not my favorite scene Larry and I have ever done. There's certainly been funnier ones, but in terms of richness, this scene was great. And when I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, I was so happy. And the second part of the scene is we're waiting for Cousin Andy and Larry's father. And
all this was cut.
Yes. Yeah. They pull up. And Larry says, why were you late? And they were doing a test run to the airport to see the best way to go. And Richard's not leaving his character, Andy's not leaving for a day or two. But that night, they decided to do a test run to the airport, which, gold, perfection. All of that cut.
That's so Jewish.
But all of that cut because of that stupid meditation shit. Because that was gold. And the meditation was not gold. Meditation was silver.
I am with you.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
And then I'll discuss what we're about to do. Go ahead.
Okay, so then they're all given shovels. The gravedigger gives them all shovels and walks away because he only has 4 shovels. And then we see them dig. Time passes.
Okay, now I want to speak up about this, please.
Larry has dirt all over his face.
Yes, but here's what bothered me also. And it was before we could do 40-minute episodes, so I will say that.
Yes.
We were locked into less than a half hour. Now 40 minutes, sometimes 45. But we had so many funny moments in that grave digging scene with each other, arguments. I don't remember, there was a run that we all, that I started to have, and then Larry and Richard would back me, that was hysterical with Shelley's character. I don't remember what it was, but I remember there was so much gold in that scene, and it was reduced to a montage. And montages are generally used to save time. I get that. But even, like I said, the Jaya should have been cut down. Fine. Cut down the grave digging scene. And if you notice, in the grave digging scene, we're yelling at each other in the montage.
With the music.
Yes. But what we were saying in those moments was really, really funny. So, again,
we'll never know,
very
Jeff.
frustrating. No, by the way, I don't know if they still are good, and I do have a VHS player, but I have those scenes, all the cuts from those scenes on VHS.
Really?
I know yes, and I know that Larry would not like me to put them up online. I know it for a fact. So it's really for my own enjoyment. I have the tapes. I've never watched them because I would just get frustrated, and now I think, what if they weren't that great? What if my memory didn't?
You never know. Richard, let me ask you a question. Do you watch yourself on things? No, you don't?
I watch myself on Curb.
On Curb is the only thing I watch.
Yeah, because I'm part of the creative team. I'm part of the whole thing.
I watch myself on Curb not for that reason. I watch myself on Curb because I'm playing such an extreme character that she's so not me. And the whole show tickles me so much, and my character tickles me so much that I could watch it. But other things I can't watch. And I especially can't watch when I'm myself, like on a talk show or something.
Right. Yeah,
that I really can't watch.
That's painful.
You know when I do watch it, if I'm filming, I sometimes ask for a visual replay, but I won't listen. And I just want to see if I'm telling the truth.
But by the way, I think the enemy of, which we never do on Curb, we've done it twice, I think, in all the years, is playback. A lot of movies I've done, they'll play back the scene, and everyone with their headphones is watching, and that slows comedy down. It's no good.
I don't remember ever doing that on Curb.
No. I'm not talking about Curb. I'm talking about movie. Yeah. On movies I've done. Curb, we've done it twice, but for technical reasons.
Right. Well,
not
that's
for
different.
Comedic reasons.
You do have to do it sometimes for technical reasons.
But it ends, I wouldn't even want to watch it without sound. By the way, little sidebar, the movie Amelie, which I love, and I've seen it so many times that I've started, when I watch it now, I only watch it in French because I know what's going to happen. And it's the whole story. And you see how much of the story is in the characters visually. All right.
So now we cut to, there's dirt all over Larry's face.
By the way, so many times when I talk, not only do I think that the audience at home is so not interested in what I have to say, but I'm speaking of visually, looking at you and Richard, and you're like, why is he talking about this? I don't get. All right, whatever. You're both nonplussed, but continue, because it's an elephant.
Later on, Larry's in the shower, and we see him chanting, Jaya, Jaya.
Jaya, Jaya, Jaya,
Jaya, Jaya, Jaya, I made it out of clay, and when it's dry and ready, oh Jaya, I will play. Yo, Jaya, 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 Jaya.
Somehow he segues from Jaya chanting into the dreidel song. Always one of my favorite songs.
Well, by the way, I sang that when I dropped you off at the airport.
No, you sang Oh Hanukkah, Oh Hanukkah.
Hanukkah? I didn't throw in dreidel?
No, you did Hanukkah,
Okay,
Oh Hanukkah.
okay, all right.
That's season 9 or 10, I think. And then there's a knock on the door, and it's Richard Lewis, and Richard's angry. You always just see Richard's false anger.
Okay, 2 thoughts here. Shower, completely unnecessary. It is funny, the Hanukkah, oh Hanukkah, but it's establishing the thing for the next scene, which is Richard coming in. And you know what it means? Fuck me. And it's like a...
Right, so Richard tells
that
him...
could have been all been cut. That's just what I'm saying.
Richard tells him that Jaya means fuck me. That's what it means.
Okay.
And he's all pissed off. And then we cut to Larry and Cheryl having breakfast on the patio. There's birds in the background. And Larry, says that sometimes he likes to imagine...
Hold on. And please hold that thought. To me, the perfect cut is what happens in the graveyard covered in dirt, cutting to what we know is the next morning, and he's sitting clean. You didn't need the stuff in the middle. You could have gone right from the graveyard. I know I'm nitpicking, but it also is my thought. You could have gone great to that breakfast. I'm just saying there was time to be had for that earlier scene. And
Larry says,
sometimes I like to pretend that I'm deaf, and I try to imagine what it would be like not to be able to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so bad.
He's not Mr. Nature, Larry. And then there's a knock on the door, and it's police officers with the gravedigger. And apparently, Larry's been passing bad money, counterfeit money. So you realize that money was the fake money he had from the first scene.
By the way, when I was watching it, I forgot that was what it is. And I thought, we didn't really do a scene establishing where Larry might get counterfeit money. And then when he says, no, it's from a movie I did, I was like, oh. Yeah. Oh, and then the beauty also coming up is when he says to the cops, my mother died. And they could give a shit.
Well,
which,
that's
by
the out.
Way,
that's his excuse. My mother died.
A perfect out. And we see as he's leaving and he's off camera, he says, Jaya, fuck me.
Jaya.
But the point being is, if he had cut down the Richard Lewis thing, we either would include him saying that or he didn't have to say it. That's all.
And this episode was directed by Brian Gordon.
And by the way, my opinion, Brian Gordon's best episode doing the show.
And I
think it's beautifully directed.
We were introduced to Richard Kind and to Shelley Berman.
Yes.
And for that reason, it was a lot of things going on in this episode. It's a hilarious episode. But for that reason, it's an important episode in the Curb history.
It is
because we were
very
introduced
important.
to 2 recurring characters that were essential to the storyline in future episodes.
What's great for me in rewatching it is I really realized that it's a great episode. I knew the scene with Shelley and Richard, the saying that the mother died, but I was so upset. And you can see I still take it. I'm no longer upset, though, but I acknowledge that it was frustrating, all that stuff being cut. But I was so upset about it. And I remember when we were cutting the show and I would get cuts, I was very upset. And I explained to Larry, because I'm very honest. I don't hold things for resentment. I told him how upset I was. And he said, this is one of those things that you got to let go because you're a producer. And I didn't agree as a producer, but I understood what he was saying. And also on the show, I lay a lot of pipe. And he's explained to me, thank you. Someone had to do it. No one else ever had to do it. I was laying out what we're about to set up. Or I turn him onto things that are going to get him into trouble. That was my job on the show. And what also is a bonus thing to notice is I'm in the show, but I've said nothing in the show. There's no lines of dialogue from me in the
this
show.
episode.
Yeah, but by the way, no problem with that. Wasn't my frustration. It was the overall grave digging scene. But actually, Susie, not being in an episode is pretty fucking great. When I'm just a producer on set and I'm just doing my producing job and I'm not in the episode, which has happened 3 or 4 times, I love it. So it's not about attention on me. It just was, the scene was a thing of beauty.
My favorite thing in the episode is she didn't want to bother you. That's my favorite thing in the episode. She didn't want to bother you.
My favorite thing is you missed a good one.
You missed a good one.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing.
I was saying about Jeff and Larry sitting on the curb. I was there that night and I heard it, and it was terrific. And the 2 things I thought of when I heard it was cut was it's the same. I really thought it was there's 3 things. It's the same. The Seinfeld was notorious for not having any sentimentality whatsoever. Was he holding on to that? And the third thing was, I hope my friend Jeff doesn't get mistreated on this show.
That's very kind of you.
Wasn't.
And I was never mistreated.
Well, of course.
That wasn't even a mistreatment.
Hold on. Let me explain.
Not being appreciated, you mean?
2 or 3 years until your character was able to not just help late night, but to propel a story or to have opinions or your improvisation. I was afraid that your destiny was what happened on that curb. As time went on, I mean, how many seasons did you do? 10?
We did 12.
12. As time went on, it got, you know.
I think what people don't always understand, and we know because we're actors in the business, is that it takes a long time for a show to find itself and for characters to figure out who they are.
By
on
the way,
show.
that episode was really, and you, by the way, in the next episode, like we did in the earlier episode, The Doll, you started to find your character.
That's
However, after the one that's actually coming up next, where it's a similar Susie angry scene, then your character had some nuance. You'd yell, but you had some nuance. And then Larry was welcome until he pissed you off. That was never the case before. So there was
But things
nuance.
develop over the years. And, if you go back, I mean, I used to do this years ago. I used to go to the Museum of Broadcasting on, on 50-something Street?
Yes.
And I used to watch old pilots. And if you go and watch old pilots of things, they're completely different than what the show ended up being. And what was nice is that we were given the luxury of finding ourselves. Where on a network, we might have been canceled already.
Network, we would never even be on. We would never be on a network.
Of that this year because I was on a show very different from what you guys did, but it was a cop show, and it within the first season, not just the pilot, the first season, we sort of knew who we were. That kind of thing is gold. And
right. By the way, Richard, on that show, did you ever have any gunplay?
Always had gunplay.
Did you really, though? You did not. Did you shoot anybody? Because that's important. By the way, I also want to say, in terms of being misused early on, my job from season 1 to season 12 was to lay pipe. That was my number one job, to be grounding and explain what's going on. I was allowed sometimes, and I use the word sometimes, through the show to be funny. But most of the time, I laid
You were
pipe.
the straight man. You were Larry Straight Man.
I was Larry
Yes.
Straight Man. But also, there was when it was really groovy for me, it had a Laurel and Hardy feel to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll get to scenes like that, and we'll point them out to everybody when we get there.
But also, I think that's what happened to me is, in my career, is that so many people don't know I'm funny. I mean that sincerely. But it's affected my stand-up more than anything, whereas I don't draw like a lot of my peers do. And I'm not complaining about that because whoever wants to come see me, I'm thrilled and I have a great time doing it. But I know it's because people are looking and they think he's an actor.
Well,
is he doing comedy?
It happens to all of us.
No,
they
I'm
think
not
we're
saying,
our characters.
They think we're actors. And by the way, I know since post-Curb, I know that's happened to you. Richard, you're not a stand-up. Susie, you're retired.
Yeah,
but it still happens for me.
In a way, it's a testament to how good we are that people actually think we're those characters.
By the way, I'll let you say that, and we'll end on that. That's sweet.
And Richard, thank you so much. And we're going to see you again in future
we have to
episodes.
see
You're
him
going to come back
numerous times. And
I know the exact one I want him to come back. Can I say one word?
The dinner table. Yes, I know. The dinner table, I know, is one.
That was season 11.
And by the way, you're so heavily involved with Richard in that scene.
Yeah.
It's like it's all, your motivation is based on him in that scene, and I love it. What a great scene.
Thank you, Richard, for coming.
Thank
Jeff,
you,
I'll see you next time.
Seeing you, I'm out in Long Branch, New Jersey, and I got nobody here. I'm,
Hey, come over. You want to come for dinner? I'm not that far.
Where are you?
At my house. You've been to my house.
Richard,
yeah, no.
Don't ask people.
You're an hour away.
Don't ask people where they live.
He knows where I live. He's been to my house.
But I'm in Long Branch,
I don't want people knowing.
I'm at the Jersey Shore.
See, now you fucked up, Richard. You know why? Fans of yours are going to start going to stores and restaurants trying to see
in the beach community.
The beach community, yes.
That is correct.
Love you, boys.
I love you guys. I love you.